All right, all right. Welcome to Nonprofit Nuggets. We are here. This is a short conversation with some amazing professionals that is meant to give us actionable insights into key areas of your nonprofit organization and ministry. I'm Brad Tisdale. I'm your host. I serve as a fractional CFO here, and I'm here with my friends and colleagues, Paul Damon and John Delaney, and we're so excited to have you guys. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Great,
Glad to join, Brad.
thank you, thank you. Well, we're going to be talking about what I think is a pretty interesting and provocative subject, and around fundraising, but talking about planned giving. But before we jump into that, why don't y'all just give me a quick bio of who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing, and those kind of things. Paul, you want to start us off?
Sure. My name is Paul Damon, and I've been in the financial services arena for about 40 plus years. I spent about 25 years running my own firm, and I sold that last year so that I could focus really on this topic that we're going to talk about today, which is plan giving and helping and serving nonprofits to help them build a strong financial base so that they can do what they're being called and led to do. And so that's what we do. Is it's more on plan giving, legacy giving, that area. And John, I'll let John explain what he does, but he and I work very closely together because both areas are very important, and we want to integrate them into a very comprehensive approach.
Great, thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So, John DeLang here. I got my start in fundraising more or less right after I realized that a career in politics was not for me. So, as we hurtled towards the 2024 elections, I think that choice was borne out well. But I started working in a small shop fundraising operation for a local pregnancy care center about 10 years ago now. And what I recognized at that time was everybody has to wear so many hats, and every organization that is just looking forward, they say, hey, what are the things that are working well? And how can we even afford to try something when the results are unproven? And so, as I helped lead that organization's fundraising efforts over the seven-figure mark, and then worked for some national organizations developing their programs, and I was just motivated to help the types of organizations that I've worked for and that I see looking forward, asking those questions. And I only have 10 hours a week to dedicate to fundraising, or I can only, spend an additional several $1,000s this year on something that might or might not work. And so the answers to those questions are things that I'm excited to dive into, and have helped some different clients around the country find more effective ways to reach out to their supporter base and help generate new opportunities for the organization. So my efforts right now are dedicated around optimizing digital fundraising and direct mail fundraising for Summit Ministries, and then working with several other consultants and coaching for small organizations with stewardship planning partners and a strategic fundraising plan.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Well, you brought up something that I want to touch on as we step into this. But as we're talking to nonprofit organizations and ministries that are probably in the small to mid-size range, that meaning there's limited resources around. And so that's why all of us around it, we have hearts that desire to build the kingdom, but most nonprofits might not be able to have a full-time fundraiser or planned giving officer or even a CFO. And so that's where we like to camp out and help out and have these kind of efficiencies to give some strategic high-level expertise thinking to nonprofits and ministries in specific areas. And so I love that we're all on the same page and doing that here. So let's dive in a little bit and just talk about this. Some nonprofits or people might hear this word planned giving. They might not even know what planned giving is. They might have heard it. So Paul, how would you explain just in general to somebody what planned giving is and what that looks like? Can you just give us a definition?
Sure. So there are basically four segments or areas in the world of fundraising. and the most current and immediate one is cash, and it's looking for gifts now. Obviously, it's very important. The bills have to be paid and things have to be funded, so cash giving is important. And then the next is major gifts, which is tends to be again cash, but with larger number of zeros, if you will. So larger gifts kind of fall into that major. Planned gifts we think of as asset-based gifts. So when I say asset-based gifts, that's giving from the area of our wealth that's not immediately liquid. And the reason it's so important, Brad, is because 90% of the world's wealth is non-cash. And that includes businesses, real estate, investment portfolios, retirement plans, personal property. You can literally give anything you can value, you can give as a charitable gift. So planned giving and major gifts often fall very closely together because it's usually a larger dollar size. So when somebody's given a portion of their business before they sell, it might be a $10 million gift. And so certainly that's a major gift. And then the fourth is legacy giving, and that's what we call leave behind money. So the challenge for many nonprofits is they're always going after the cash. Well, that's, again, the 10% bucket or the 10% in the pocket. And all the competition is going after that same pool of money. So there's 1.3 million nonprofits in the United States. And most of them are going after those cash type gifts. And as we've talked a little bit about already, it's really hard for a smaller mid-size or size organization to compete in the planned giving area because there's a level of expertise. It's very different because you're really having a conversation with somebody about giving of their assets. And so the most common initial response we get is, I don't know, I could do that. So first of all, it's an educational opportunity to show them how they can use their assets to make their gifts, and then helping them execute again, which is, it can be quite intense and very in-depth, going into gifting of assets to a trust, having the trust liquidate the assets. So that whole process is fairly technical and requires a lot of expertise, and that's really what we bring.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So I think I hear you saying that people or nonprofits and ministries kind of tend to shy away from that because one, it's complex, and two, sometimes those can be maybe awkward conversations that people don't want to have with their donors to talk about, being, passing on or leaving a legacy or those kind of things. Why do you think, any other thoughts on why people struggle with those conversations with their donors in those ways?
I'll let John answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some research that Dr. Russell James did through Texas Tech, and he's an authority on the scientific backing for planned giving. And one of the things that he identified was there is an aversion to talking about someone's passing away, right? We kind of live our lives with the illusion of immortality. And so for a nonprofit to prompt a conversation around a gift and a will or some process where you look further afield in your asset planning, it can break that. And so it needs to be approached through a way of helping people think about the legacy that they want to give and thank them for their years of involvement. So when we look back on the years of giving to the organization that these individuals derived a lot of joy and meaning from, we're helping them imagine in the future continuing those positive emotions rather than starting from a point of, hey, we all know that we're going to pass away someday. Here's what we'd recommend doing next. And that's a way to ground it in the positive rather than frame it through the negative.
And I'll add to that. The legacy gift is actually one of the easier ones to get because, as John pointed out,
right,
you're gone, right? So you don't need the money anymore. So, and actually, research shows that there's a high level of planned giving around, or legacy giving around individuals or couples that maybe never had children, biological children, or maybe they've got, unfortunately, some estranged relationships and they're and their family with their kids. And so they're looking to give larger chunks to charity. And so having that conversation about that leave behind money is a little bit easier from the standpoint of it doesn't cause any financial change today. But then, as John has pointed out, oftentimes that legacy gift then leads to a deeper conversation about current giving while you're still, they say you're giving while you're living, so you're knowing where it's going. And that idea of being able to experience the joy of giving and living generously. So what we do is we work with, we call ministry partners. We don't use the term donor, but with the ministry partners of a nonprofit and helping those couples or individuals really look at their situation to identify, are there opportunities for you to be more philanthropic today rather than waiting to just leave behind? Could you identify a portion of what you have and do some major giving? So there's three to do that. You got to answer three questions. One is, how much do we need? So husband and wife or individual, how much do we need to sustain us over our lifetime? Two is, what do we want to do for our heirs? If we have heirs, how much do we want to leave them? And then how do we want to leave it, lump sums or income or whatever? And then that opens up the third opportunity, which is, what do we want to do with what's left over? So if we don't need it, if our kids don't need it, then we've got an opportunity to, again, do some giving or more strategic, more significant, we say transformational gifts while we're still this side of eternity.
That's great. Thank you. It's really good. John, you mentioned about some donors that, uh, you actually alluded a little bit to which we best approach or might be open to a planned giving type of conversation.
Sure. So there was some research that was done on that front, Brad, and the surprising conclusions that were taken from, let's see, Agents of Good. I saw this statistic from them that the majority of your gifts and wills, bequest gifts, are going to come from the individuals who give often, but not very much. So they're likely in your database already, but they may not be on your radar for this specifically. So Kevin Schulman from Donor Voice did some studies as well for ASPCA and found that individuals who gave the most, but the cumulative total, so gave the most times, but the cumulative total was relatively low, had the highest likelihood of giving. So in order to spark some of these conversations, you could imagine running a report in your CRM where you filter by the number of gifts in the given term. Let's say over the last 10 years, you ask the report to identify all people who've given more than 20 times in 10 years, but have given under the annual donation level, which would qualify someone for maybe your major gift program or something like that. And so these are your top prospects in your database. You could add in additional data points like age of the supporter, whether or not they have children, the things that Paul was mentioning earlier, but the frequency of their giving and the cumulative total are your two key drivers for generating a list of prospects for these conversations. And then we go to them and say, we are so grateful for your consistent support of this organization. It's so meaningful that you have been a part of this ministry for so long. And we would like to offer you information, or in the consideration process, when you open up these new conversations, we'd like to be a part of that. And rather than asking them for direct action, it's just the start of a conversation. And so often that uncovers incredible opportunity.
That's great. I love that. That really gives some focus to nonprofit leaders to be able to target in and decide on which donors could be they should approach first. And that might not be many. There might just be 5 to 10 donors that meet those criteria that you're talking about there. And so it's something that to definitely do and consider and think about there. Um, John or Paul, what role might direct mail or kind of annual giving efforts play in this plan giving?
I'll
Sure.
let John take that again.
Well, I'll throw this out there and then I'll pass it back to you, Paul.
Okay.
As we think about a regular process of outbound communication from the nonprofit, there's opportunities to do what you might think of as drip marketing, whereby someone may not be ready for some of these intentional long-term focused conversations right now, but we can let them know that we are thinking about it and we're ready for those conversations when they arise. So this can be a PS in email communications. It can be an insert in your direct mail program. For example, I just had a mail piece drop through Summit Ministries where we alerted individuals about a new opportunity to make a gift through their donor advised fund on our website. So we have a new technology where individuals can log in directly to their donor advised fund software on our website and complete a gift. And so we not only sent that out through personal relationships, but we also reiterated that messaging through our direct mail process. And Paul, I think one of the other things to think through is if we're taking people away from maybe an annual budgetary need through marketing a bequest gift or a gift of assets or something complex, do you think that would dissuade people from giving in the near term? What have you found over the last few years in working with ministry partners?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. Actually, what research shows is when somebody makes a planned gift, they tend to give more, especially if it's a legacy type of a planned gift. They tend to do more giving today or currently. So it actually increases their connection to the organization. And I think it's a psychology principle that the way our minds work is when we give something or when we promise to give something to somebody or an organization, that kind of cements or solidifies in our mind, I must really care about that. If I've just pledged 10% of my estate or X amount to XYZ organization, huh? And again, it's all in our mind, right? It's not necessarily even consciously thought about, but the reality is it's a very real fact that when people do name that legacy piece, they do more giving currently. And I think the other way that the communication can be effective in enhancing this whole area is in terms of what we would call maybe more of a marketing approach to ideas that can help benefit our ministry partners. So, for example, we do a workshop called Who Will Inherit the Mess? And it's all about estate planning. Why do we do that? Well, we do that for the ministry partners of an organization because, oh, looks like we lost.
Yeah,
Brad,
we lost Brad here. Let me pull up LinkedIn real quick to see if we're still live on that front.
okay.
All right, looks like we're still live. Looks like we're still live here, Paul. So
Let's
let's
keep going.
finish it off on behalf of the audience.
Sounds good. So what I was saying is plan giving around estate planning. It's a very important concept or topic, and many people need to hear about that because research shows that 50% of Americans don't have any estate plan, and 70% don't have an updated one. In other words, it hasn't been done in the last 10 years with all the new tax law changes that have come in place. So we get a great response when we offer that to ministry partners, because there is such a need for it. There's such a lack of understanding about what to do and how to do it. And it's an area that people struggle with. I tell you, the biggest challenge is dealing with that second question is how much for the kids. And some people, they have the attitude that the more the better. Hey, Brad's back. All right. Hey, Brad.
Hey,
We're just keeping on rolling here. It's
y'all
okay.
keep going. Thank you.
So answering that question, how much for the kids, and then when. So there's only 4 ways you can get your kids' money. One is lump sums now, or income now, or lump sums later, or income later. So again, these are all things that people have to wrestle with and make a decision. And a lot of times they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. And that's the worst case scenario. So again, the workshop just encourages them. We offer them a consultation at no cost, just to say, hey, what are you doing? Can we help you? Is there any opportunities here where we can help you implement an estate plan to handle this? And then the second type is more tax planning. So a lot of times people don't understand the tax benefits to charitable giving. And so we talk about social capital, right? So in many situations, there's a need for social capital when you sell an asset or when you liquidate an asset, and you have an obligation to pay a capital gains, or at death, sometimes an estate tax. But those are optional taxes. And what I mean by that is, with proper planning and with using charitable planning, we can avoid or eliminate a lot of those income tax or capital gains tax issues, and convert those tax dollars into significant charitable gifts, called transformational gifts. We'll ask a simple question. It's kind of a trick question, but if I said, Brad, would you rather give $1 million to the IRS or $1 million to your favorite charity? Which would you choose?
Charity.
Right. And 99 out of 100 would. So we want to do this, but we just don't know how, and we don't know that we can do it. And that's really our role, John and I, in communicating and offering these opportunities for people to engage with somebody to learn more about that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank y'all for keeping things going and rolling. Speak to me just for a minute, and just a few more minutes here. There's always the urgency of annual fund, right? Those cash gifts you're talking about, Paul. But the planned giving space it seems so far out there. I mean, what is the kind of thing that you talk to people about spending the time now to benefit in a time period of return that might not happen for another 5, 10, 15, 20 years? It's hard to get, I feel like, for maybe leaders to see the ROI on spending that time now, right?
Yeah. I understand it. There's tension there. There's dollars now and dollars later, and they're both important. And we don't want to ignore dollars now. We never want to go in and say, well, let's scrap all your fundraising day-to-day activities and do everything long-term, for transformational type gifts. So it's really important to do both. And we think you can do both. And, you do what God calls you to do and trust the results. We had a situation on our team just recently. We call it a private briefing for some high capacity ministry partners of a nonprofit. It was last October. Somebody wanted to talk to us after that event. And so it was in the month of November. We were meeting with them, and they make like $10 million a year in annual income. And they had a huge amount of cash that they were sitting on. And so we're starting to help them understand, you got a lot of excess wealth here that you're never going to use. You don't want it to go to your kids. And so the guy says, well, should we give some of it this year? And we said, yeah, you could give $3 million this year, this month, and not even miss it. You'll make it all back in the next quarter of next year. And so that's what they did. So it doesn't have to be, 30 years from now. it was actually 3 million and it was less than 30 days. Now that's not going to happen often,
Right.
but God can do anything he wants. And so John and I and our team, we simply believe we are faithful with what God's calling us to do. We're encouraging people to be generous. We're communicating the message of generosity, and let the Holy Spirit do the work.
That's right. I love that. And that's really helpful. The other thing I think about planned giving, this will be my last kind of comment or question here, is really nonprofits do focus so much, or ministries, on the ins and outs, right? What's the budget? What's my annual giving, income, and then my expenses? And it's all very, from the financial guy perspective, income statement oriented and budget oriented, right? But a lot of times the balance sheet, the wealth, the heftiness of a ministry is very thin. There's not a lot of cash reserves. There's not a lot of investments out there. There's just in and out, and they're constantly churning. And I feel like planned giving is a great way to build the balance sheet of the organization. And I think some of that would require you to have discipline. And I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on this. Is if a bequest does come in, or a non-cash gift does come in, do you take that and put it right into operations and have this great fundraising year, or do you use it as an opportunity to ask the board to set that aside as a board designated gift and actually maybe build some savings, build some reserves, build an endowment, because that's might be a one-time thing, that happens. So you don't want to necessarily squander that opportunity. I don't know. Any thoughts on that scenario?
Well, I would say that yes, I would say both. It's a both and world. So I would say put some into immediate operations so you can have a little bit of a cushion, and then invest actually in with some of that to expand your planned giving capacity. One of the things that we do with our nonprofit clients, where it's appropriate, is we train their development staff on how to have these conversations with high capacity partners. Well, that opens up more opportunities for significant gifts. Hey, did you know, Mr. or Mrs. Business Person, that before you sell your business, you can give a portion of that to a charitable trust, avoid all the tax, have a huge charitable gift come out of that, and also generate an income tax deduction. So you get a double tax benefit, and you get, again, the transformational gift opportunity to really make a difference in the kingdom using a portion of your wealth. It's usually a small percentage. It's not usually half or all. It's usually 5 or 10%. But can be a big number for somebody. It's worth a lot, right? So, and what we're finding, Brad, is that there's an increased job satisfaction with those people in development because they're having different conversations. It's not about, hey, can you help us out and give us some money? It's like, how can we help you? How can we serve you? How can we help you avoid taxes and create opportunities to make kingdom investments? Who wouldn't want to do that?
That's great. That's great.
And to piggyback off of that real life example, oftentimes you hear about these complex asset-based decision-making processes, and it can be easy for individuals at the nonprofit and for people that own small to medium businesses to say that wouldn't be for me. That seems like something that maybe I would handle if I had more employees or more cash or a larger asset base. But I worked with a family that had a small home service business, and they were selling in the 6-figure range, their business that they'd grown on the side, and then brought on 1 to 2 full-time employees in the past several years, and they were selling to a regional competitor. And they were able to do exactly what Paul described. They set aside the majority of the proceeds from the business into, or the majority of the ownership of the business into a trust that offset the capital gains and generated an income tax deduction for them in the year in which they sold. And so they had a double tax benefit even at that relatively small transaction size for a business. Now that's a relatively large transaction size in the terms of most of the nonprofits in our world. But just as we think about it from the ministry partners perspective, we want to help them see that there are creative solutions to some of these problems before the transaction happens and the IRS man shows up.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think a lot of this too, and part of what I want to do on this show is just having awareness of these opportunities out there and encouraging people and organizations to try to step into that a little bit. And so maybe I might ask each of you guys, can y'all give me just 1 to 2 like real practical first steps for that nonprofit ministry executive director or church pastor or somebody that's out there that's like, okay, I hear this planned giving. This sounds like it's a great opportunity, but what do I do now? So 1 or 2 just things that y'all might share.
John, you want to go first?
Sure. So as I think about this, don't be discouraged. You're in a spot where 1 or 2 relationships that go through this process with you can make a wild difference for your organization. The average credit card gift that most of our organizations are receiving online in 2023 was about $125, $128. And the average bequest, a gift in a will in 2023 was $46,594. And so even if you strike out 300 times, the return from an average credit card gift to an average gift in a will is 363 times larger. So be faithful in the process. Offer this opportunity to extend the legacy and the joy of giving to your faithful supporters. And as my first mentor in fundraising said, a mature legacy giving process will always generate the largest gift of the year for your organization when it's fully built.
That's right.
That's right. I would say there's something called a wealth screening tools that can help identify in your partnership base of supporters who might have some of these opportunities we're talking about, own their own business or have investment real estate are 2 common ones, or maybe have more significant financial resources and investments. So identifying in your current ministry partners who might have opportunities, and then partnering with somebody, whoever that might be, that can help have that conversation in terms of how to convert some of those assets into transformational gifts. I think that would be what I would say would be a good first step to kind of get the ball rolling and start to have those conversations.
No, that's great. Thank you, guys. And I'm going to reiterate or add some things that you've already said as far as practical pieces. One, I'm going to say, go through your donor list, like you're saying, Paul, and identify those people that have been giving to you the longest. I don't care if it's $20 a month or $20 a year. If they've been giving it to you for 10 or 15 or 20 years, those are the people you need to be talking to about planned giving. So do that work. The other thing I might say is simply put something on your website, on your giving page about legacy giving or planned giving. And it can be 1 sentence that says, if you'd like to discuss legacy or planned giving, please call the office or whatever. And just to let people know that you're open to it and you're out there. And if you do get that phone call, that's fine. Then you guys call Paul, call John, call your attorney that's sitting out there on the board, whoever it is, and get that conversation going. But that just opens people up and lets people know that you're available to take those kinds of gifts, right? Or asset-based gifts. So just 2 ideas there. Good. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on here, and thank you for carrying us through this show as I limped through it from a tech perspective. But I really do appreciate it. Tell everybody about where they can get in touch with you, and what the best way to do that is.
I can be reached easily at paul@stewardshipplanningpartners.com.
Great.
Absolutely. And you can find me on LinkedIn, John DeLang, and that's I'm quite active there and happy to answer any questions that you might have around fundraising challenges or how to generate the attention and trust of your ideal supporters.
That's great. Thank you, guys. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me too as well, my email is brad@btadvisors.co. I'm also active on LinkedIn, and so I look forward to seeing you out there. Thank y'all, and talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.